Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
Another episode of Trash Talk. With me, as always, is TJ O'Connor. Tonight we have James Clark from James Clark Sports Psychology and Hypnosis Therapy. Trash Talk is brought to you again by Valhalla Combat Sports Incorporated, Ink Shrink Sets out in Brighton, Minnesota, Spartan Martial Arts, Origin Wellness CBD Wellness Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Fighters, TJ's mom, and James Clark's Sports Psychology and Hypnosis Therapy. How are you doing tonight, James?
Good. Yourselves?
I was doing good until I called you James. I'm just going to... Do you mind calling you Jim?
Call me Jim, that's fine.
I'm sorry. That was kind of funny. That was an inside joke. If you guys watch The Office, you guys might understand that. But tonight we're here to talk to Jim about his hypnosis therapy and sports psychology business, whatever we're going to call that. I'm sorry. Again, I keep butchering that. And yeah, we're just going to move on. Tell us a little bit more about your business and what inspired you to bring it on and how long you've been practicing so far.
Well, I got a degree in psychology from the University of St. Thomas way back in 1995. And then back then my emphasis, I mean, there are different avenues that people take in psychology. There's, the behaviorists that try to go back into somebody's life and try to figure out what went wrong, if there's something that went wrong, what they try to, but that takes a long time in order to sort that out. My emphasis at first was like dream interpretation. So I had some clients originally that would come in, and I would study their dreams with them. And so, like Freud had this theory where if people would their issues would come out in their dreams, and then sometimes there's a conflict between somebody's conscious mind and their subconscious mind where whatever they were feeling would be blocked by their conscious mind, but it would come out in like symbolism of their dreams. And so there's some people that are afraid to face something with their conscious mind, but they need to release that tension or that stress, and so it'll come out in their dreams. So that was my first. I had clients in like dream interpretation, so that was my first thing. But then, since I started getting more into athletics and saw how a big part of, like sports psychology plays a part in someone's success as an athlete, I started switching gears and studying sports psychology, and then I started getting into hypnosis. And at first, I was doing like experimentations on myself, really. I would hire hypnotists I wanted to put certain post-hypnotic suggestions into my head. So I know this is going to sound, off-center, but a lot of people that go into psychology, some of them are pretty off-center. They go into psychology to sort out their own problems, and it's very common. So I would do like experimentations on myself. I would have like hypnotists put post-hypnotic suggestions into my head. Like, for example, you guys know that I've broken world records for physical fitness things. Like I broke the world record for the most, pull-ups in an hour. I broke the record for the most sit-ups in 24 hours. So I've broken several like Guinness records. But for example, I did 44,001 sit-ups in 24 hours. There's a point in there where that ceases to be a physical event, and it turns into a psychological one, because some people will just flat out quit. So I would have a sports psychologist put post-hypnotic suggestions into my head, like I wouldn't feel the pain of it, like the pain would I wouldn't register it in my mind, so, and then you guys know that I've studied like Platonic metaphysics. That's what I actually have my my PhD is in Platonic metaphysics. I know this is going to sound goofy to some people, but Plato believed that this world wasn't real, that it was like a shadow world. And so I know this is going to sound goofy to people listening to this, but so I kind of extrapolated Plato's theories. Like, so if the world wasn't, yeah.
Can I interrupt you really
Sure.
quick, just to explain to the people listening? Hey, just for a simple mind's perspective, for the rest of what James Clark is going to say, think of what he is about to say as the movie The Matrix.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah,
let that sink in for a second, and once that sinks in, understand that that's the reality. Once you believe you can bend bullets or you can move past bullets, you can. Now, continue, Jim, to explain to these guys how they can stop bullets and move faster.
well, that movie is actually if you know, there was a really good part, and this is what it's very Platonic. Like his Platonic metaphysics is what's beyond the physical world. Metaphysics is what's greater than the physical world, what's beyond it. So that's what I studied. I had to write a 180-page dissertation on Plato's theories, and so I really got into it. I read all of his dialogues. I had to read all the Platonic dialogues, like Plato's studies, you know, with his teacher, which is Socrates. So I read all these things. So I extrapolated that that if Plato, you know, Plato believed that the world wasn't real, that it was like a shadow world or like a dream world, but there was so like he said the corporeal world that doesn't actually exist, like the world that we can see with our eyes or we can touch with our fingers is actually not real. So I just extrapolated. So if it's not real, then it can be manipulated to anything that we believe that it is or can be. And so let me just boil it down. So what I wanted to do was, getting back to the hypnosis, it's hard to convince yourself if you're like looking at things with your eyes and touching things. It's hard to convince yourself that it isn't real because you can touch it, you can see it. But I tried to have a hypnotist help me convince that it wasn't real. So if it's not real, then I can manipulate whatever to do whatever I believe in. And so I would try to convince myself that I could do 44,000 sit-ups. That's what I needed to do to break the world record. So I would have the guy put post-hypnotic suggestion to my head that I wouldn't feel the pain. So if the world isn't real, the pain that I would experience doing the sit-ups wasn't real either. And so if it's not real, I'm not really being hurt. This is what happens when people quit, when they're like in a fight or what they're trying to do something. Their instinct for self-preservation will take over, and they say, "Oh, I can be hurt doing this." But if Plato believed that the only thing real about us was our soul, the body wasn't. We don't have a soul. We are a soul. We have a body. If that makes any sense. So if I can believe that what's real about me is not the body but the soul, then I can do 44,000 sit-ups, and I broke a record. I did 33,000 push-ups in 24 hours. I did 44,001. So I mean, if you look at me, I look like 230 pounds of chewed bubble gum. I don't look like I can do 5 sit-ups, but basically I was just able to endure the pain, convince myself through the hypnosis that the pain wasn't real, and I just simply didn't quit. So if you just think about this, look how much a person can achieve in this world if they simply don't quit. You know, if they're willing to stay with something until the very end, you're going to win. And so I would have these post-hypnotic things put in my head that, okay, the world wasn't real. I can do 44,000 sit-ups. And so I started helping other athletes. So I've had, some clients that I try to remove doubts in their mind before their competitions, or I try to help them lose fear for their fights. So I have a handful of clients, and I've had some success with them where they would come in, and after the hypnosis therapy, I would sit down and talk with them. What exactly do they want to get out of their sport? What do they want to achieve? And then I have like a session with them where I figure out what's holding them back. If they're not winning or if they're not doing well, what's holding them back? So I have like a session where we kind of do an analysis of what's going on. But a lot of times with athletes, if they lose and they lose matches or fights or whatever that they should win, a lot of it is doubts. A lot of it is fear, anxiety before a competition. That's one thing I think I've had success with some of the clients that I've had, is to remove doubts from their mind, remove fear. Like if you go into a fight, you don't have any doubts, you don't have any fear, you're going to be a dangerous individual.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Could you? Sorry, TJ, I don't mean to cut you off, but could you just remind everybody how old you were, Jim, when you had your first MMA fight, and if there was any doubts going through your mind with your age going into that fight, and what you did to deal with that?
Yeah, so the very first MMA fight that I had when I was 45 years old, so exactly 10 years ago, and I've had 12 MMA fights. Overall, I'm 8-4 as an MMA fighter. There are doubts that try to come into your head, especially when you're 45. I've had fights at 45, and I think my last fight was 5 years ago. I think maybe 6 years ago. So I was 49 or 50 years old, and I won my very last fight. But I think one thing for an older guy to get in there, like sometimes the doubts will come into your head, like, okay, I'm 50 years old, I'm fighting a guy that's 22. Should I even be out here? So what I would try to do is I would have like the hypnosis sessions to remove those doubts from my head. And then I think what really helped me is that just losing fear, like some people, when somebody gets into a cage and they hear that door click shut and that pin drop in there, that's a very surreal feeling. And it's quite a sensation knowing that your only way out of that cage is to go through the guy across from you. So it's very rare that someone would have the courage to fight. So that you're talking about a very rare individual to begin with. But if you can lose fear, lose doubts, you're on the road of doing very well in this fight. So that's what having me lose the fear of not afraid of taking a beating, that I would I would keep coming forward, keep battling. And so I think that's what helped me the most, because at 50 years old, a guy is not in his prime, obviously. And he's going to have a hard time with a guy that's 22, but I was still able to go 8-4 because through the hypnosis and just to convince myself that if I'm getting punched or getting kicked, that it wasn't really me that was taking the damage. You know what I'm saying? For that getting back to that Platonic philosophy, that the only thing real about me is my soul. So if the guy kicks me in the stomach or punches me in the face, it's not really hurting me. I know that sounds odd, but that's what actually helped me get through my fights.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you talk about the learning and being able to separate mind and body from the two things. And, you talk about the numbers of some of the accomplishments you've done. I've known these things, and you still say them, and I'm still just shocked. You talk about 44,000 sit-ups in 24 hours. The normal person can't comprehend that. And I think that's what your teachings has shown, and you've allowed that to transition. And you kind of touched on it, but we all know as fighters, fighting is such a mental sport. So being able to bring this type of aspect into it, this is almost like a different level of training. Would you not say that this is just as important as working on, the physical aspects of fighting? Because fighting is so mental, like you said. You can work as hard as you want, and then that one little drop of fear sips in, and then it expands, and then it turns into a bigger thing, and you see guys not being able to perform under the lights. So when did you decide to actually bring this public and let other people, because we know you've been working with some of the guys internally at Valhalla for some time now?
Yeah, actually this is, I think, one of the you guys know that I probably spend the most time with my own son, Joshua. I work with everybody in the gym, but he's the fighter that I probably spend the most time with. I think one of the things that I've noticed, working with him, and I've hypnotized him too, is he's only had 12 boxing matches, but I've had him. You guys have seen some of his boxing matches, and I would send him out there against guys that had 90 fights or 100 fights, and he had 12, but he wouldn't get hit. He wouldn't get hit in them. He would make people miss. And I think one of the things that I'd put in his head was that he would see the punches coming at him like that the other guy was moving in slow motion. You know, like you hear that expression where a guy is in a zone, let's say a baseball player, that he's just on a tear, like, and he's hit the ball like 30 straight games where he's got a hit, like the guy's in a zone, that he sees everything coming and like it's moving in slow motion. I mean, that's when a guy is like, he's really confident, or everything, the game is slowing down from him. So you can put that suggestion into a guy's head, like put that suggestion into their subconscious that they will see things slowing down for them. And so I think that's one thing that I've noticed, you know, working with him, is that I've been able to put that into his head. And you guys have seen it. You guys have seen him box where we would have boxing matches where he wouldn't get hit at all. He would just see the punches coming. So that is a suggestion that you can put into a fighter's head where like things will slow down for them, that they'll see the other guy like he's moving in slow motion.
Yeah. I mean, and okay, so with a lot of the MMA community, I mean, especially at the higher level, Bellator, UFC, ONE FC, a lot of these guys have been seeking the help of sports psychologists, and not necessarily hypnosis, but the hypnosis goes hand in hand with the sports psychology. And you have a psychology degree. You have everything else to back you up behind it, especially the firsthand experience in what a lot of these combatants are going to be doing. So, also, before I go any further, the confidentiality that you provide, James, because I don't think you've ever spoken with me except for the people, or I guess the one person, your son, that has been comfortable with with me and us knowing that that this is something that they pursue. There's a lot of ego involved in MMA, and there's some people that don't necessarily want people to know that they're dealing with things mentally. But as we get further and further into the future, you know, 2019 brought us a lot, and now into 2020, I expect a lot more in the mental health growth and development, how to deal with it and how things are handled. You know, it's a huge issue, and this kind of plays in hand with that issue. And some people might have too much of an ego to admit that they need help in that realm. And I mean, it's not, you're not going to tell nobody.
Yeah, no, I don't. You know, I have some clients, but I never tell other people who they are, and I don't divulge the things that they tell me in these sessions. My only goal is to help them overcome any setback that they have. This is what I've noticed, that some people, it's kind of a tragedy to see somebody that should be very good, like they're very athletic or they're very quick. They have a lot of attributes, but their one flaw would be that they don't believe in themselves, or they don't believe that they can win. And like TJ was saying this before, this is such a big part of someone's like training, that they could train for hours on technique. They could lift weights. They could become strong. They could work, you know, to improve their speed, whatever, work on their flexibility. There are a lot of physical things that to go in. But if you have doubts going into, you know, a contest, or if someone, for some reason, they don't believe that they can win, or they don't think that they deserve to win, they'll sabotage themselves. And that's just a tragedy when you have somebody that you can see that could be world class, but they disappear from the sport just because they didn't believe that they could win, or they believe that they deserved to win or something. So they would sabotage themselves, and they were gone from the sport. That's a tragedy.
I think a lot of people involved in the world understand exactly what you said and exactly where you're coming from, because I did. And if anybody out there that's kind of not even feeling that way, you want to keep yourself from feeling that way, or know somebody that might be feeling a little bit doubtful upon themselves, and this has a negative connotation or is it denotation? I think it's connotation.
Connotation.
Yeah.
A negative connotation, but being a gym fighter, being somebody who performs every single day inside the gym, but just doesn't have it either here, wherever. And we know how these two connect. And it just, if it's just not there, but the skill is,
Yeah.
seek out James Clark Sports Psychology and Hypnosis Therapy, or any other psychologist, therapist, something along those realms, because this is one of those things that's just super sad to see guys and gals be held back from, and it's from what TJ said earlier, a drop it out.
Yeah, and sometimes it's something that small, and like you said, in the age of focusing on mental health, this is the time to do it, because when in the sport, this isn't, it's not football, it's not basketball. You lose, you get beat up. I mean, it's a very physical game, so you have to be able to account for everything you can. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be doubt. I mean, sometimes you have everything and you just need a little bit more confidence. I mean, it could be a positive thing as well. I mean, say you're training and you just need that little bit of, you fucking got this, and you just need to hear it a little bit differently. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's all different avenues, and in the game of trying to find every advantage you can within the rule set, I don't see why fighters wouldn't look into this. I mean, I think this is a brilliant idea, what you're doing, Jim. Luckily, like I said, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for so long that I know how qualified you are for this, and I'm excited for the fighters locally to have this opportunity, and I hope to see them take advantage of it. Really do.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. Yeah, thanks for the interview today. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for being on with us. Trash Talk is nothing without the fighters, former fighters, and now sports psychologists and hypnosis therapists, motherfuckers. Like and subscribe to Trash Talk with Damian and TJ, and be sure to reach out to James Clark. He ain't no hoe, and you shouldn't be one either.
Are you listening? Damn.